Amara Washington stepped through the double doors of Westlake High with her chin held high, even as the weight of dread settled in her stomach. 5 months at this school had taught her that confidence was armor, necessary but not always sufficient. The hallway stretched before her like a gauntlet, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as students clustered around lockers, their laughter and chatter a wall of sound that somehow made her feel more alone. 312 steps. That's how many it took to get from the entrance to her first period class. Amara had counted them during her first week, a private ritual that gave her the illusion of control. Sometimes she made it all the way without incident. Today would not be one of those days. Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence. The voice cut through the hallway noise like a knife, and Amara felt her shoulders tense involuntarily. Kylie Blackwood, leaning against a row of lockers with her usual entourage, a predatory smile spreading across her face. 17 years old, blonde hair pulled into a perfect ponytail, student council vice president, and daughter of the school board president. Kylie wielded her status like a weapon, and for reasons Amara couldn't fathom, she had chosen Amara as her favorite target. Amara kept walking, eyes forward, grip tightening on her backpack strap. 157, 158, 159. I'm talking to you, Charity Case. 200 steps. The nickname stung, a reference to the scholarship that had brought Amara to Westlake after her family's move from Atlanta. A move that her father had insisted would give her better opportunities, better connections, a better future. No one had mentioned it would also give her better bullies. Footsteps behind her now. Kylie wasn't letting this go. Amara walked faster, but a hand gripped her shoulder, spinning her around with enough force that her carefully arranged braids whipped across her face. Didn't your parents teach you it's rude to ignore people? Kylie's voice was sweet, her eyes anything but. My parents taught me to ignore ignorance, Amara replied, the words slipping out before she could stop them. A mistake. She knew it instantly. Kylie's smile vanished. What did you just say to me? Students were slowing now, sensing the promise of drama. A circle was forming, the invisible arena where reputations lived and died at Westlake High. I need to get to class, Amara said, trying to turn away, but Kylie stepped closer, invading her space. You don't belong here, Kylie said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Everyone knows it. You're just too stupid to figure it out. Amara felt heat rising in her face, her father's words echoing in her mind. Never let them see you sweat. Control the moment, or the moment controls you. But it was hard to remember his advice with Kylie's face inches from hers, with dozens of eyes watching, waiting for her to break. Move, Kylie. Amara's voice was steadier than she felt. Or what? Your ghetto family going to come after me? Kylie's laugh was sharp, designed to cut. I've seen where you live. My dad's garden shed is bigger than your apartment. The circle of students tightened. Phones were out now, recording. Whatever happened next would be preserved, shared, commented on. Social media immortality. Amara took a deep breath, forcing her hands to unclench. You don't know anything about my family. I know enough, Kylie said, reaching out and flicking one of Amara's braids. I know your mom works at the grocery store. I know your dad couldn't even get a real job when you moved here. Security guard, isn't he, at the mall? Must be quite the step down from whatever he did back in the hood. Every word was like a slap, but it was the dismissal of her father that hit hardest. If Kylie only knew who Marcus Washington really was, what he'd done, what he was capable of, but that was a secret Amara had been taught to guard fiercely. My father, Amara started, but Kylie cut her off with a shove that sent her stumbling back against the lockers. The metal connected with Amara's spine, pain blooming between her shoulder blades. Your father what? Kylie stepped closer, emboldened by Amara's silence. Going to come up here and scare me with his little mall cop badge. The first bell rang, but no one moved. The hallway was a powder keg, and Kylie was striking matches. Just leave me alone, Amara said, straightening up, trying to sidestep the other girl. Kylie moved with her, blocking her path. Or what? You'll run home crying to Daddy? Tell him the mean white girls are picking on you again? Playing the victim is what your people do best, isn't it? Something in Amara snapped. Not from the racism she'd heard worse, but from the repeated mocking of her father, a man who had sacrificed everything to give her a safe life. A man whose nightmares still woke him in the early hours, whose hands sometimes shook when car doors slammed too loudly, whose eyes scanned every room for exits and threats even at parent-teacher conferences. My father, Amara said, her voice low and controlled, would tell me that you're not worth my time. Kylie's eyes narrowed. Your father doesn't know who he's dealing with. My dad runs this school, this district. With one phone call, he could have your precious scholarship revoked. Is that supposed to scare me? Amara asked, surprising herself with the calm in her voice. It should, Kylie replied, leaning in closer. Because after that call, your family can pack up and go back to whatever ghetto hellhole you crawled out of. The second bell rang. They were all officially late now. You've said your piece, Amara said. Now move. Kylie's smile returned, satisfied that she'd made her point. She stepped back, gesturing dramatically for Amara to pass. Your Highness. Amara took a step forward, relief washing over her. And then Kylie's foot jutted out, a quick, practiced movement. Amara felt herself falling, her books and papers scattering across the floor as her hands shot out instinctively. The impact with the polished linoleum knocked the wind from her lungs, pain spiking through her palms and knees. Laughter erupted around her. Phones captured her humiliation from multiple angles. Kylie stood over her, victorious. Oops, Kylie said, her voice dripping with false concern. You should really watch where you're going. Wouldn't want you to get hurt. Amara stared at the floor, focusing on her breathing the way her father had taught her. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Control the moment. But the moment felt very much beyond her control, as Kylie's designer shoe came to rest on top of Amara's history essay, the one she'd stayed up until 2 a.m. to finish. Please, Amara said, hating the pleading in her voice. That took me all night. Kylie's smile widened as she ground her heel into the paper, smearing the ink. Should have used a computer like everyone else in the 21st century. Oh wait, can your family even afford one? Amara lunged for the paper, but Kylie was quicker, snatching it up and holding it out of reach. Give it back, Amara said, getting to her feet. Make me, Kylie replied, her eyes gleaming with challenge. What happened next would replay in Amara's mind for days. She reached for the paper, and Kylie yanked it back, laughing. Frustration and anger crystallized into something dangerous, and before Amara could think, her hand shot out, connecting with Kylie's perfect ponytail, pulling hard enough that Kylie's head snapped back. The other girl yelped, more from surprise than pain, but it was enough. The paper fluttered to the ground, and Amara grabbed it, clutching it to her chest. For a moment, there was only stunned silence. Then Kylie's face contorted with rage. You're dead, she hissed, lunging forward. Amara backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The circle of students had tightened, a wall of bodies and phones. Kylie's hands connected with Amara's shoulders, shoving her hard against the lockers again. The metal handle dug into Amara's back, but she stayed upright this time, instinctively raising her arms to protect herself. Ms. Blackwood, Ms. Washington. Vice Principal Chen's voice cut through the tension like a machete. The circle of students dissolved instantly, everyone suddenly remembering they had places to be. Kylie stepped back, her face transforming, rage replaced with practiced innocence. Mr. Chen, she said, her voice sweetness itself. "We were just my office, both of you, now." Chen's voice left no room for argument. He stood with his arms crossed, his expression promising consequences. Amara gathered her scattered belongings with shaking hands, anger and humiliation burning in her chest. This wasn't fair. None of it was fair. She hadn't done anything wrong. Not until Kylie pushed her to the brink. As they followed Chen down the emptying hallway, Kylie leaned close, her whisper venomous in Amara's ear. "You're finished at this school. When my father hears about this, your scholarship is history." Amara said nothing, clutching her ruined essay tighter. She'd never been in trouble at school before. Her father would be disappointed, worried. He'd been so proud when she got the scholarship, so hopeful about this new start. And now, because of Kylie Blackwood, it might all be over. What Amara didn't know, what Kylie couldn't possibly know, was that by the end of the day, the balance of power at Westlake High would shift permanently. Because Marcus Washington was not just a mall security guard. Before Amara was born, before he'd left that life behind, Marcus had been one of the most lethal snipers in U.S. military history. A ghost who moved through war zones unseen. A man who could end a life from a mile away with a single perfect shot. A man who had spent years learning to control his emotions, to remain calm under pressure, to analyze and neutralize threats. And Kylie Blackwood had just become a threat to his daughter. Vice Principal Chen's office felt like a courtroom, with its polished desk serving as the bench and Chen himself as both judge and jury. Amara sat rigidly in one of the two chairs facing him, her ruined essay clutched in her lap like evidence. Kylie lounged in the other chair, one leg crossed over the other, examining her manicured nails with practiced indifference. "I've been at Westlake for 15 years, Chen began, his fingers steepled in front of him. "And I've never tolerated physical altercations in my hallways." "She attacked me," Kylie said immediately, her voice quavering with manufactured distress. "I was just trying to help her pick up her papers and she grabbed my hair." Amara's head snapped toward her, disbelief etched across her face. "That's not—" "One at a time," Chen interrupted, raising a hand. "Ms. Washington, you'll have your turn." Kylie seized the opportunity, tears now glistening in her eyes. "I don't know what I did to make her hate me so much. I've tried to be nice, to include her, but she's always so hostile." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue from Chen's desk. "My father says some people just don't want to integrate, but I kept trying anyway." Amara's fingernails dug into her palms. The performance was masterful. Kylie playing both victim and magnanimous savior, casting Amara as the angry, ungrateful outsider. She'd seen this routine before, but never performed with such precision. "Ms. Washington?" Chen turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Your version of events?" Amara took a deep breath, her father's voice steady in her mind. "Facts, not emotions. Clear, precise, unembellished. Kylie has been harassing me for months. Today, she blocked my path, insulted my family, pushed me into the lockers, and tripped me deliberately. When she ruined my essay by stepping on it and refused to give it back, I grabbed her hair. I shouldn't have done that, but everything else she's saying is a lie." Chen's eyes flickered between the two girls, weighing their words. "Are there witnesses who would corroborate your story, Ms. Washington?" "Everyone saw it," Amara replied, then added more quietly, "but I doubt anyone will admit it." Kylie scoffed. "See what I mean? It's always someone else's fault." Chen held up his hand again, silencing her. "I'm going to check the hallway cameras, which should shed some light on what happened today. In the meantime, you'll both wait here while I call your parents." The blood drained from Amara's face. "My parents are at work. My mom's shift doesn't end until 4, and my dad—" "Your father answers his phone during work hours for emergencies," Chen said, already reaching for his desk phone. This qualifies. As Chen dialed the first number, Kylie leaned over and whispered, "My dad's golfing with the superintendent today. By this afternoon, you'll be packing up your locker." Amara said nothing, staring straight ahead. She'd never been in trouble like this before. Her stomach churned at the thought of her father being called away from work. They couldn't afford for him to lose hours, let alone his job. Everything about their life in this town operated on a razor's edge of financial precarity. The scholarship, the small apartment, her mother's extra shifts, her father swallowing his pride to take the security job when no one would hire a former military specialist with no college degree. Chen spoke briefly into the phone, his words measured and professional. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Vice Principal Chen at Westlake. Yes, it concerns Kylie. There's been an incident involving another student. I understand you're busy, but..." "Yes, I see. Of course, we can discuss it then." He hung up, his mouth a tight line. "Your father will address this at his scheduled meeting with the principal tomorrow morning, Ms. Blackwood." Kylie smiled triumphantly. Chen didn't notice, already dialing the next number. "Washington Mall Security, how may I direct your call?" The voice on the other end was tinny but audible in the quiet office. "This is Vice Principal Chen from Westlake High. I need to speak with Marcus Washington regarding his daughter." "One moment." The silence stretched. Amara's heart pounded in her ears. Chen tapped his pen against his desk calendar. Marcus Washington. Her father's voice was calm, controlled, the voice he used when speaking to strangers. "Mr. Washington, this is Vice Principal Chen at Westlake High. There's been an incident involving your daughter and another student. We need you to come in as soon as possible." A pause so brief most would miss it. "Is Amara hurt?" "No, sir. This is a disciplinary matter." Another pause, longer this time. "I understand. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The call ended. Chen set the phone down and looked between the two girls. "Until your parents arrive and we review the footage, you'll both remain here. I have a meeting to attend, so Mrs. Patel will supervise you from the outer office." As Chen left, closing the door behind him, Kylie's mask of innocence slipped. Her smile was cold, calculating. "Your daddy's going to be so disappointed when he finds out his perfect little girl got into a fight." Amara turned away, fixing her gaze on the motivational poster hanging on Chen's wall. A soaring eagle against a mountain backdrop. Perseverance, the courage to ignore the obstacles in your path. The silent treatment, real mature. Kylie examined her nails again. "You know, my father doesn't just run the school board, he's got connections all over this town. One word from him and your dad can kiss that mall job goodbye." Amara's hands trembled in her lap, but she kept her face expressionless. Kylie had no idea who she was threatening, no idea at all. 15 miles away, Marcus Washington stood in the employee break room of the Westfield Mall, staring at the phone in his hand. His supervisor, Dave Mercer, watched from the doorway. "Everything all right, Washington? Family emergency?" Marcus slipped the phone into his pocket. "My daughter's school. I need to head over there." Dave nodded, unsurprised. "Take the rest of your shift off. Family comes first." "I appreciate it." Marcus unclipped his radio from his belt and placed it on the table, then removed his security badge. "Must be serious if Chen's calling you in," Dave commented. He'd worked security at the school before taking the mall job. That guy doesn't dial parents unless he has to. Marcus's expression revealed nothing. Amara's never been in trouble before. First time for everything. Dave shrugged. "My kid's on a first-name basis with the whole administration. Don't sweat it too much." But Marcus was already sweating it, his mind running through scenarios, variables, potential threats. It was an old habit, one he'd never fully shed even after leaving his military career behind. Amara wouldn't get into a fight without provocation. She'd been raised better than that, trained better. If she'd resorted to physical confrontation, the situation must have been severe. In the parking lot, Marcus climbed into his 10-year-old Honda Civic. Once inside, alone, he allowed himself a moment. He closed his eyes, pressed his palms flat against his thighs, and took 3 deep, controlled breaths. The exercises were second nature after years of using them to steady his hands before a shot. His phone buzzed. A text from Amara. "I'm sorry, Dad. It wasn't my fault." Marcus stared at the message, a cold sensation spreading through his chest. Amara had never been one to deflect responsibility. If she said it wasn't her fault, then something else was happening. Something that had been building, perhaps. He thought back to the subtle changes he'd noticed over the past few months. Her quietness at dinner, her vague answers about school, the way she'd stopped mentioning friends or activities. He texted back, "I'm on my way. We'll sort this out together." The drive to Westlake High took 18 minutes. Marcus parked in the visitor's spot and made his way to the front entrance, his stride purposeful but unhurried. To anyone watching, he appeared calm, just another parent answering a school summons. No one would guess that beneath his placid exterior, his mind was systematically assessing the building's entry points, camera placements, and potential security weaknesses, a professional habit he couldn't break. The front office receptionist looked up as he entered. "Can I help you?" "Marcus Washington. Vice Principal Chen called me about my daughter, Amara." Recognition flickered across her face. "Yes, they're waiting in his office. I'll take you back." As he followed her down the hallway, Marcus caught fragments of lessons drifting from classrooms. Algebra formulas, Shakespeare quotes, the normal rhythm of a school day continuing while his daughter sat in trouble. He kept his hands loose at his sides, his posture relaxed but alert, the stance of a man ready to move in any direction at a moment's notice. The receptionist knocked on Chen's door, then opened it. "Mr. Washington is here." Marcus stepped into the office, his eyes immediately finding Amara. She sat with her back straight, chin up, but he could read the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremble in her clasped hands. Beside her sat another girl, blonde, designer clothes, an expression of practiced innocence that didn't reach her eyes. Vice Principal Chen stood as Marcus entered. "Mr. Washington, thank you for coming so quickly. I'm Robert Chen." Marcus shook his hand, his grip firm but not challenging. "What happened?" Before Chen could answer, the blonde girl spoke, her voice dripping with feigned distress. "She attacked me in the hallway. I was just trying to be nice, and she grabbed my hair and yanked it so hard I almost fell." Marcus didn't look at her. His eyes remained on Chen, waiting for the official account. "There was an altercation between the students," Chen explained. "We're still piecing together exactly what happened. Ms. Blackwood claims Amara attacked her unprovoked. Amara says there was prior harassment that escalated to physical contact." "Did you check the security cameras?" Marcus asked, his voice level. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly, either at the question or at Marcus's calm demeanor. "We're pulling the footage now. It should give us a clearer picture." Marcus nodded, then finally turned his attention to the blonde girl. "You're Kylie Blackwood?" Something in his tone made her sit up straighter. "Yes. Your father is Maxwell Blackwood, school board president." It wasn't a question. Kylie's smile returned, smug and assured. "That's right." Marcus held her gaze a moment longer than was comfortable, then turned to his daughter. "Amara, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Dad." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the strain beneath it. Chen gestured to an empty chair. "Mr. Washington, please have a seat. We're still waiting on the security footage." And then the office door opened, and a young administrative assistant stepped in, holding a tablet. I have the video from the hallway, Mr. Chen. Chen took the tablet. Thank you, Mrs. Patel. He tapped the screen a few times, then frowned. Let me see. He tapped again, his frown deepening. That's strange. The footage is corrupted. Corrupted? Marcus's voice remained neutral, but his attention sharpened. The timestamp jumps from 8:07 to 8:23, right when the incident would have occurred. Chen explained, still tapping at the screen. This has never happened before. Kylie's smile didn't falter, but a flash of something, relief perhaps, crossed her face so quickly most people would miss it. Marcus didn't miss it. He'd spent years reading micro-expressions through a scope, judging wind by the movement of leaves, measuring threat levels from the twitch of a finger. He saw everything. And in that moment, Marcus Washington knew exactly what kind of situation his daughter was facing. This wasn't just a schoolyard squabble. This was systematic, privileged predation. This was power being wielded without consequence or accountability. This was war. Corrupted footage is quite a coincidence, Marcus said, his voice deceptively soft. To anyone else, he might have sounded merely curious, but Amara recognized the tone. It was the same one he used when telling stories about missions gone sideways, about moments when he'd identified a threat before it materialized. Vice Principal Chen was still frowning at the tablet. I'll have Ite look into it, but without the footage, we're left with conflicting accounts. He set the tablet down on his desk with a sigh. Unless there are witnesses willing to come forward. There were at least 20 students watching, Amara said, her voice tight. They all had their phones out. Chen's expression shifted slightly. Recognition, perhaps, that he'd missed something obvious. You're saying there might be student recordings? There definitely are, Amara confirmed. Everyone was filming. Kylie's confident posture faltered for the first time. Her eyes darted to the door, as if calculating an escape route. Marcus caught the gesture, filing it away. In his former life, he'd learned to read body language like others read books. A twitch, a glance, a shift in weight could tell him more than words ever would. If such videos exist, Chen said, already reaching for his phone, they would be subject to our electronic device policy. Students are not permitted to record on school grounds without authorization. With respect, Mr. Chen, Marcus interjected, his calm unbroken. That policy can't supersede the need to determine what actually happened here. If student recordings exist, they should be considered evidence. Chen hesitated, hand hovering over the phone. Perhaps, but there are privacy concerns. The incident occurred in a public hallway, Marcus pointed out. There's no reasonable expectation of privacy in that setting. Furthermore, if the school's own security system has failed, then alternative evidence becomes even more crucial. The careful emphasis on failed wasn't lost on Chen, whose lips pressed into a thin line. Mr. Washington, are you implying something about our security system? I'm simply stating facts, Marcus replied, his gaze level. Security footage doesn't typically corrupt itself for precisely the 16 minutes surrounding an incident. A flush crept up Chen's neck. I can assure you, Mr. Washington, that Westlake High takes all security matters very seriously. I'm sure you do. Marcus nodded, his expression giving nothing away. Which is why I expect you'll be equally serious about investigating both the altercation and the missing footage. Kylie shifted in her seat, her earlier smugness now tempered with uncertainty. She wasn't used to adults who didn't bend to the Blackwood name, who didn't accept the narrative she presented without question. Since we don't have the footage, Chen said, attempting to regain control of the situation, I'll need to speak with potential witnesses. In the meantime, both girls will receive in-school suspension pending further investigation. Suspension? Kylie's voice rose an octave. But I didn't do anything wrong. My father will never allow this. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Ms. Blackwood, this is standard procedure for any physical altercation, regardless of who initiated it. When your father meets with Principal Hoffman tomorrow, he can address any concerns about our disciplinary process." "This is ridiculous," Kylie muttered, slumping back in her chair. Marcus watched the interaction carefully, noting how quickly Chen had acquiesced to the mention of Maxwell Blackwood's scheduled meeting. The power dynamics were becoming clearer. Chen was caught between protocol and politics, trying to navigate a situation with a student whose father wielded significant influence. "Amara," Marcus said, turning to his daughter, "I'd like to hear exactly what happened, from beginning to end." Before she could speak, Chen interrupted. "Mr. Washington, we typically conduct these interviews separately to ensure—" "My daughter won't be interviewed without me present," Marcus stated, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "As her parent, I have that right." Chen's mouth opened, then closed. He nodded reluctantly. "Very well." Amara sat up straighter, her eyes meeting her father's. Drawing strength from his presence, she began to speak, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. "I was walking to first period when Kylie blocked my path. She called me a charity case, then followed me when I tried to keep walking. She grabbed my shoulder and spun me around." Kylie scoffed. "That's not what—" "Let her finish," Marcus said, not looking at Kylie. His focus remained entirely on his daughter, giving her the space and security to tell her story. Amara continued, detailing the harassment, the physical intimidation, the destruction of her essay, and finally, her retaliation by pulling Kylie's hair. Throughout her account, Marcus listened without interruption, his expression neutral but attentive. When she finished, Chen turned to Kylie. "Ms. Blackwood, would you like to respond to these allegations?" "They're all lies," Kylie said immediately, but her voice lacked the conviction it had held earlier. "I was just trying to say good morning, and she went crazy on me." "You called my family ghetto," Amara said quietly. "You said your dad's garden shed is bigger than our apartment. You said my father couldn't get a real job." Marcus's eyes narrowed imperceptibly at this, but his face remained composed. Inside, however, a cold calculation was taking place, the kind of assessment he'd performed countless times before high-risk operations. He was mapping out vulnerabilities, pressure points, and potential courses of action. "Is that true, Ms. Blackwood?" Chen asked, his tone sharpening. Kylie's face flushed. "She's twisting my words. I might have said something about her scholarship, but we have a zero-tolerance policy for bullying," Chen reminded her, some of his earlier deference fading. "Especially when it targets a student's socioeconomic status or race." Kylie's eyes widened. "Race? I never said anything about—" "Your people," Amara interrupted. "Playing the victim is what your people do best. Those were your exact words." The office fell silent. Chen looked genuinely uncomfortable now, glancing between the two girls with a deepening frown. "That's a serious accusation," he finally said. "It's the truth," Amara replied simply. Marcus, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke. "Mr. Chen, I'd like to know what disciplinary actions Westlake takes in cases of confirmed bullying, particularly when it involves racial components." Chen shifted in his seat. "Our policies are quite clear. Documented bullying results in a formal warning for first offenses, followed by suspensions of increasing length for subsequent incidents. When racial bias is involved, the consequences are more severe, potentially including mandatory counseling and community service." "And what constitutes documentation in the absence of security footage?" Marcus pressed. "Witness statements primarily," Chen admitted. "Though in cases where it's one student's word against another's." "You default to the student whose father sits on the school board," Marcus finished for him. Chen's face reddened. "That's not—" "It's the practical reality," Marcus continued, his voice still calm but edged with something sharper now. I understand institutional pressures, Mr. Chen, but I also understand my daughter. Amara doesn't lie, and she doesn't initiate confrontations. If she says she was harassed, then she was harassed. The office phone rang, interrupting what was becoming an increasingly tense conversation. Chen reached for it with obvious relief. Excuse me, I need to take this. As Chen spoke in hushed tones, Kylie leaned toward Amara and whispered, Your daddy can't protect you forever. This isn't over. What she didn't expect was for Marcus to hear her from across the room, another skill honed through years of training to detect the faintest sounds in hostile environments. His eyes shifted to her, his gaze so penetrating that Kylie instinctively leaned back in her chair. Ms. Blackwood, Marcus said, his voice gentle but somehow all the more unsettling for it. Threats generally don't improve difficult situations. They tend to escalate them. Kylie blinked, caught off guard by both his hearing and his measured response. I wasn't, yes, sir, right away. Chen hung up the phone, his expression grave. That was Principal Hoffman. Mr. Blackwood is on the line demanding to speak with his daughter. The shift in the room's atmosphere was immediate. Kylie sat up straighter, her confidence visibly returning. Chen looked increasingly uncomfortable, caught between proper procedure and political reality. I'll need to step out to transfer the call, Chen said, standing. Please wait here. As soon as the door closed behind him, Kylie's smirk returned in full force. My father will fix this. He always does. Marcus studied her with the same detached interest he might once have given a target through his scope, clinical, analytical, devoid of emotion. You believe your father's position gives you impunity, he observed. It wasn't a question. Kylie's smirk faltered slightly. I don't know what that means. It means you think you can do whatever you want without consequences, Amara translated, her voice tight. It's not what I think. It's how things work, Kylie replied with a shrug. My father donates more money to this school than your family probably makes in a year. People like you don't win against people like us. That's just reality. Marcus tilted his head slightly, a gesture Amara recognized as one of his rare tells. He was reassessing the situation, formulating a different approach. Reality is rarely as fixed as people believe, he said quietly. I've seen empires fall in a single afternoon. There was something in his tone that made Kylie's smugness waver, if only for a moment. For the first time, she looked at Marcus, really looked at him, taking in his perfect posture, his economical movements, the way his eyes seemed to register everything while revealing nothing. You're just a mall cop, she said, but the words lacked their earlier conviction. Marcus smiled, a small, private expression that never reached his eyes. The world is full of people who are more than they appear to be, Ms. Blackwood. Your father has power in this school, perhaps in this town. But power is contextual, temporary, and often more fragile than those who wield it realize. The door opened, and Chen returned, his face drawn with stress. Ms. Blackwood, your father would like to speak with you in my office. Amara, Mr. Washington, please wait here. As Kylie stood to leave, she cast one last glance at Amara, a look that promised this wasn't over. But when her eyes flickered to Marcus, there was something new there, something she would never admit to herself, the first shadow of doubt. Once the door closed behind them, Amara turned to her father. Dad, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have grabbed her hair, but You don't need to apologize, Marcus said, his voice gentler now. You defended yourself against someone who's been systematically harassing you. Why didn't you tell us this was happening? Amara looked down at her hands. You and Mom work so hard, you've got enough to worry about without me adding to it. Marcus reached out, placing his hand over hers. Amara, look at me. She raised her eyes to meet his. There is nothing, Nothing more important to me than your safety and well-being. Not my job, not our finances, nothing. Do you understand? She nodded, blinking back sudden tears. This ends today, Marcus said, his voice soft but filled with absolute certainty. One way or another. What neither of them knew was that across the hall, Maxwell Blackwood was making the same promise to his daughter, but with very different intentions. The battle lines were being drawn, and by the day's end, Westlake High would never be the same. Maxwell Blackwood was not a man accustomed to waiting. As CEO of Blackwood Development, the largest real estate firm in the county, his time was considered precious by everyone in his orbit, including, until today, Westlake High School. So when Principal Hoffman had initially refused to put his golf game on hold for a minor incident involving Kylie, Maxwell's reaction had been immediate and severe. "I don't think you understand who you're speaking to," he'd said into his phone, standing on the 10th hole of the Westlake Country Club, his golf partners pretending not to listen. "My family has donated over $2 million to that school in the past decade. I expect certain courtesies in return." Now 30 minutes later, he stood in Vice Principal Chen's private office, the phone pressed to his ear as he listened to his daughter's tearful account of the morning's events. His expression darkened with each word. "This Washington girl physically assaulted you," he repeated, his voice carrying through the thin walls. "And they're giving her the same punishment as you? That's unacceptable." In the outer office, Marcus's ears picked up every word despite the closed door. Military training had honed his hearing to detect whispers across impossible distances, a skill that had kept him alive in environments where a single missed sound meant death. Now he used that same ability to gather intelligence on his daughter's adversary. "Dad," she grabbed my hair and nearly pulled me to the ground. Kylie's voice came through clearly to Marcus. "And she's saying I'm the bully. They're even trying to make it about race." Maxwell's voice rose in response. "Of course they are. That's always the fallback when these people can't take responsibility for their actions." Marcus's expression didn't change, but his hand, resting on the armrest, tightened imperceptibly. Beside him, Amara noticed but said nothing. She'd grown up reading her father's micro-expressions, understanding that his outward calm often masked intense calculation. "What do they expect?" Maxwell continued, unaware he was being overheard. "The girl is here on charity. She should be grateful, not attacking students who actually belong here." "Mr. Washington?" Amara's voice pulled Marcus back to the immediate situation. "What's going to happen now?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "That depends on several factors. The school has procedures they're supposed to follow, but procedures can be influenced by people like Mr. Blackwood," Amara said, not a question. Marcus nodded. "Systems respond to pressure. The Blackwoods know how to apply it." "So we just lose?" Amara's voice was quiet but intense. "Because we don't have money or connections?" "No," Marcus replied, meeting her gaze. "We adapt. We identify leverage points. We apply precise pressure where it matters most." Amara recognized the language from the stories he'd sometimes told her about his military days, always careful, never specific about the operations themselves, but clear about the principles of strategy. Find the weakness, exploit it, achieve the objective with minimal collateral damage. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said. "I just want her to leave me alone." "Sometimes ensuring future peace requires a demonstration of strength," Marcus replied. "Not violence," he added quickly, seeing her expression, "but clarity about boundaries and consequences." Before Amara could respond, the door to Chen's office swung open. Maxwell Blackwood emerged, his hand on Kylie's shoulder, his face a mask of practiced concern masking barely contained anger. He was tall, tanned, and expensively dressed in golf attire, a Rolex glinting on his wrist as he guided his daughter toward the outer door. Vice Principal Chen followed, his earlier authority diminished in Maxwell's presence. "Mr. Blackwood, we still need to follow procedure regarding the suspension. We'll discuss that at my meeting with Hoffman tomorrow." Maxwell cut him off without looking back. "Kylie won't be serving any suspension. The suggestion is absurd." His eyes swept the waiting area, landing briefly on Amara before shifting to Marcus. For a moment, the two men assessed each other, predator recognizing predator across different ecosystems. "You must be Washington," Maxwell said, not offering his hand. Marcus stood, his movement fluid and unhurried. "Marcus Washington." Maxwell's gaze flicked over Marcus's mall security uniform, the barest hint of a smirk touching his lips, before he masked it with professional cordiality. "Unfortunate about this incident. Children can be so impulsive." "Some more than others," Marcus agreed, his tone neutral but his meaning clear. Maxwell's eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed. Well, my daughter won't be bothering yours anymore. I suggest your daughter extend the same courtesy." It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. The clear implication that Amara was the aggressor, that his daughter was the one showing restraint. Marcus read the subtext as easily as he once read wind patterns across desert sands. "Mr. Blackwood," Marcus said, his voice still calm, "my daughter has no history of aggression or bullying. Today's incident didn't occur in a vacuum." Maxwell's smile thinned. "Are you calling my daughter a liar?" The tension in the room crystallized, sharp and dangerous. Chen stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. "Gentlemen, please. This is a school matter that will be handled through proper channels." "Of course," Maxwell agreed, though his eyes never left Marcus. "I'm sure we all want what's best for our children." "Absolutely," Marcus replied. "What's best includes accountability and consequences for harmful behavior." Something flickered across Maxwell's face. Surprise, perhaps, at being challenged so directly. He was used to deference to people accommodating his status and influence. Marcus Washington showed neither. "We'll continue this discussion through appropriate channels," Maxwell said finally, his tone dismissive. He turned to Chen. "I expect a call from Principal Hoffman by the end of the day. Come along, Kylie." As they left, Kylie cast a final glance at Amara. Not the triumphant smirk from earlier, but something more calculating, as if reassessing an opponent she'd previously underestimated. When the door closed behind them, Chen exhaled heavily. "Mr. Washington, I hope you understand the delicate position the school is in. Mr. Blackwood is a powerful man," Marcus finished for him. "I understand power dynamics, Mr. Chen. What I'm concerned with is whether my daughter will be treated fairly despite them." Chen looked genuinely conflicted. "I want to assure you that Westlake takes all student concerns seriously, regardless of external factors." "I'd like to believe that," Marcus said, "but the conveniently corrupted security footage and Mr. Blackwood's assertions that his daughter won't face consequences suggest otherwise." Chen's face flushed. "That's not—" "It's the reality we're dealing with," Marcus interrupted gently. "So let's focus on solutions. What happens now?" Chen gathered himself, returning to the safer ground of procedure. "Officially, both girls are suspended in school for today and tomorrow, pending further investigation. Amara will report to the study hall for the remainder of today. I'll speak with potential witnesses and attempt to recover any student recordings of the incident." "And unofficially?" Marcus pressed. Chen hesitated. "Mr. Washington, I've been at Westlake for 15 years. I've seen how influence operates in systems. My advice, off the record, would be to document everything going forward. If Kylie continues to target Amara, ensure there's evidence." Marcus nodded, recognizing the subtle alignment for what it was. Chen couldn't openly defy Maxwell Blackwood, but he wasn't entirely comfortable being his instrument either. "Thank you for your candor," Marcus said. "May I take Amara home for the remainder of today? I think some distance would be beneficial." Chen appeared relieved at the suggestion. "Given the circumstances, I believe that would be appropriate. She can begin her in-school suspension tomorrow." As they left the administration building, Amara finally spoke. "He's not going to let this go, is he, Mr. Blackwood?" "No," Marcus answered truthfully. "Men like that don't accept challenges to their authority or their family's perceived immunity." "What do we do?" Amara asked as they crossed the parking lot. Marcus unlocked the car door. "First, we talk to your mother. Then we make a plan." "A plan for what?" Marcus met her gaze across the car's roof. "For ensuring this never happens again." For Amara, the drive home passed in contemplative silence. She watched her father's profile, noting the slight tightening around his eyes, the measured rhythm of his breathing, signs most would miss, but which she recognized as his tactical mindset engaging. Whatever was coming, her father was already 3 steps ahead, mapping contingencies and calculating responses. Their apartment was small but meticulously organized, another habit Marcus had brought from his military days. Everything had its place. Every system had redundancies. Lisa Washington was at the kitchen table when they arrived, her nurse's scrubs replaced with jeans and a t-shirt, her hair wrapped in a colorful scarf. She'd switched shifts with a co-worker to be home when Marcus called with news of the incident. "There she is," Lisa said, standing to embrace her daughter. Her voice was warm, but her eyes were sharp, assessing Amara for any signs of harm. "You okay, baby?" "I'm fine, Mom," Amara assured her, returning the hug. Lisa looked to Marcus, reading his expression with the expertise of 20 years of marriage. "That bad, huh?" "Worse," Marcus replied. "Systematic targeting, racial components, and institutional protection for the perpetrator." Lisa's face hardened. She'd grown up in Atlanta's toughest neighborhood, learned early to navigate systems designed to diminish her, and had fought her way through nursing school while working 2 jobs. She was no stranger to battles against entrenched power. "Tell me everything," she said, gesturing them to the table where a pot of coffee already waited. For the next hour, they talked strategy. No raised voices, no wasted emotion, just clear analysis and deliberate planning. To anyone listening, they might have sounded like a military unit preparing for an operation, rather than a family addressing a school bullying incident. In a way, they were both. "So, the security footage conveniently disappeared," Lisa summarized, her fingers tapping thoughtfully against her coffee mug. "And this Blackwood man thinks his money means his daughter can do whatever she wants without consequences." "That's the situation," Marcus confirmed. Lisa turned to Amara. "And this has been going on for months. Why didn't you tell us, baby?" Amara looked down. "I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to add to your stress." Lisa reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. "That's not how this family works. Your father and I have faced worse than some entitled developer with a superiority complex." "Much worse," Marcus agreed quietly, and something in his tone made both Lisa and Amara look at him. There was a distance in his eyes, a calculating focus they recognized from rare moments when his past surfaced in his present. "Marcus," Lisa said, her voice gentle but firm, "we handle this the right way." He met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "Always." Amara looked between her parents, sensing the layers of meaning in their exchange. "What's the right way?" Marcus's expression softened as he turned to his daughter. "Strategic, legal, effective. But first," Lisa added, "we gather intelligence, evidence, we build our case." Marcus nodded. "And we ensure you're protected while we do." A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus rose, his movement silent despite the apartment's creaky floorboards, another remnant of his training. Through the peephole, he saw two teenagers shifting nervously in the hallway. He recognized one as a boy from Amara's math study group. "Amara," he called, "it's Jamal and Tyler." Amara looked surprised as she joined him at the door. Marcus opened it, nodding to the boys before stepping aside. "Hey," Jamal said, his usual confidence subdued. We wanted to check if you're okay, after what happened with Kylie." "We saw everything," Tyler added, holding up his phone. "And we saved the video before the school could make us delete it." Marcus ushered the boys inside, closing the door behind them with a quiet click. "You recorded the incident?" His tone was neutral, giving nothing away, but his eyes were sharp with interest. Jamal nodded, suddenly looking nervous under Marcus's focused attention. "Yeah, I caught most of it. A bunch of kids were filming, but the administration's been going around making everyone delete their videos, saying it's against school policy." "Convenient," Lisa remarked, joining them in the small living room. "I'm Lisa, Amara's mom." "Nice to meet you, ma'am," Tyler said, his lanky frame seeming too large for the armchair he perched on. "I'm in Amara's AP Chem class." "So why did you save the video?" Marcus asked, cutting straight to the core question. "Why risk getting in trouble?" The boys exchanged glances. Jamal spoke first. "Because it wasn't right. What Kylie did, what she's been doing, and now the school's trying to cover it up like they always do when it's a Blackwood." "Always?" Lisa picked up on the word immediately. "This has happened before?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Kylie's older brother, Jason, was the same way before he graduated. Total nightmare, but untouchable because of their dad. Last year he trashed the art room after getting a B+ on his project, and somehow it got blamed on the janitor. Marcus absorbed this information, filing it away. Pattern recognition was crucial in threat assessment, and the Blackwoods were clearly establishing a pattern. "May I see the video?" he asked. Jamal nodded, unlocking his phone and pulling up the footage. "I started recording when Kylie first approached Amara. I was across the hall, so you can't hear everything, but..." The video was shaky, but clear enough. It showed exactly what Amara had described. Kylie blocking her path, the escalating confrontation, the deliberate trip, the destruction of the essay. Most importantly, it captured Kylie's lips forming unmistakable slurs and insults before Amara finally reacted by grabbing her hair. As they watched, Marcus's expression remained impassive, but his eyes grew colder with each passing second. Lisa's reaction was less contained, a sharp intake of breath, fingers pressing against her lips, indignation radiating from her rigid posture. "She called you that to your face?" Lisa asked when the video ended, her voice tight with controlled anger. Amara nodded, her own composure remarkable for a 16-year-old who'd endured such public humiliation. "It's not the first time. But it will be the last," Marcus said quietly. He turned to Jamal. "Would you be willing to share this video with school administrators?" Jamal hesitated. "I mean, the Blackwoods basically own Westlake. Maxwell Blackwood got the last principal fired for suspending Jason after he crashed a car into the gym during a prank." "He did what?" Lisa's eyebrows shot up. "Drove his dad's Porsche through the side doors on a dare," Tyler confirmed. "Claimed it was an accident. Insurance paid for everything, and anyone who said otherwise got shut down." Marcus processed this information with the same detached analysis he'd once applied to battlefield intelligence. The Blackwoods weren't just influential, they were accustomed to operating with complete impunity, systematically removing any challenge to their authority. "Your concern is understandable," Marcus acknowledged, "but this video is evidence of targeted harassment and physical assault. Without it, it's Amara's word against Kylie's." Jamal looked at Amara, then back at Marcus. "Yeah, I'll share it. My mom's on the PTA anyway. She's been trying to call out the Blackwoods BS for years. Mine too, Tyler added. My sister had classes with Jason. She'd back this up. Marcus nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. Thank you both. This changes our tactical approach significantly. Tyler blinked at the military phrasing, but Jamal seemed to understand. My dad was Army. 2 tours in Iraq. He says the same kind of stuff. Where did you serve, Mr. Washington? Tyler asked, curiosity overcoming his earlier nervousness. Marcus's expression remained neutral. Various locations, special operations. The deliberate vagueness wasn't lost on the boys. Jamal's eyes widened slightly with recognition of what went unspoken. Special operations meant classified missions, elite units, the kind of service that didn't come with public details. Can I send you the video? Jamal asked, changing the subject. In case something happens to my phone? Good thinking, Marcus approved, taking out his own phone. As they exchanged contact information, Lisa pulled Amara into the kitchen, speaking to her in hushed tones that nonetheless carried to Marcus's trained ears. You holding up okay, baby? Really okay? I'm fine, Mom. Just embarrassed it got this far. None of this is on you, Lisa insisted. That girl's been gunning for you, and her daddy's been teaching her she can get away with anything. Well, they're about to learn differently. In the living room, Marcus thanked the boys again for their courage. This kind of integrity matters, he told them, standing up when it would be easier to look away. After they left, the Washingtons reconvened at the kitchen table. The atmosphere had shifted. They now had evidence, allies, and the beginnings of a counteroffensive. We need to move carefully, Marcus cautioned. If we present the video directly to the school, they'll be forced to address it, but the Blackwoods will almost certainly find a way to minimize the consequences. So we need leverage, Lisa concluded, her nursing experience with hospital politics giving her a keen understanding of institutional power dynamics. Something that makes them unable to sweep this under the rug. Exactly. Marcus nodded. The school has demonstrated they're susceptible to Blackwood's influence. We need to create a situation where protecting Kylie costs more than holding her accountable. How do we do that? Amara asked. Marcus's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. By understanding our adversary. Maxwell Blackwood isn't just concerned with his daughter's reputation. He's protecting his family's image and, by extension, his business interests. Blackwood Development, Lisa mused. They've got projects all over the county. Big campaign donor, too, from what I've heard. Public perception matters to operations like that, Marcus confirmed, especially with the new riverfront project coming up for city approval next month. Lisa raised an eyebrow. How do you know about that? I pay attention, Marcus replied simply. It wasn't the complete truth. In reality, after Amara's first mentions of problems with Kylie, he'd done a thorough background investigation of the Blackwood family, a habit ingrained from years of operations where knowing your potential adversaries could mean the difference between life and death. So what's the plan? Amara asked, her analytical mind, inherited from both parents, already mapping possibilities. Marcus considered for a moment, then outlined a 3-phase approach: documentation, escalation, and, if necessary, public accountability. We start by formally reporting the incident, with the video as evidence. We request a formal disciplinary hearing with the superintendent present, not just the principal. And if they stonewall us? Lisa asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Then we move to phase 2, Marcus said calmly. Escalation through official channels, school board, district office, possibly the Department of Education Civil Rights Division, given the racial component of the harassment. And phase 3? Amara pressed. Marcus and Lisa exchanged glances. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Lisa said. "But if it does, your father has experience making powerful people face consequences they thought they could avoid." The cryptic statement hung in the air. Amara studied her father's face, seeing the subtle shift in his eyes, the look he got when his former life, the life before her birth, resurfaced in his consciousness. Before she could ask for clarification, Marcus's phone rang. The screen displayed a number he didn't recognize. "Marcus Washington," he answered, his voice neutral. "Mr. Washington, this is Robert Chen." The vice principal sounded tense. "I wanted to inform you that there's been a development regarding this morning's incident." Marcus's posture shifted subtly, his senses heightening at Chen's tone. "What kind of development?" "Maxwell Blackwood has filed a formal complaint against Amara, claiming premeditated assault and requesting her immediate expulsion. He's also—" Chen hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "He's also suggested he'll pursue criminal charges for assault if the school doesn't take appropriate action." Marcus's face remained impassive, but Lisa, reading his micro-expressions, reached for his free hand, squeezing it once. "Support and solidarity." "I see," Marcus replied evenly. "And how is the school responding to these demands?" "Principal Hoffman has called an emergency disciplinary committee meeting for tomorrow morning. Mr. Blackwood will be present with his attorney. You and Amara should attend as well, with legal representation if possible." "Thank you for the heads up, Mr. Chen." After a brief pause, Chen added, his voice lower, "Mr. Washington, off the record. The Blackwoods are pushing hard on this, harder than usual. I think Maxwell sees this as a challenge to his authority, and he's—" Another pause. "He's not accustomed to being challenged." "I understand," Marcus said. "Neither am I." After hanging up, he briefed Lisa and Amara on the call. "They're escalating faster than anticipated. Maxwell's bringing legal pressure to bear immediately." "Criminal charges?" Lisa's voice was incredulous. "For pulling a girl's hair after being harassed and assaulted? That's absurd." "It's a tactic," Marcus explained. "He's not interested in actual charges. He's creating threat inflation to force the school into a position where expulsion seems like a reasonable compromise." "Can he really get me expelled?" Amara asked, her composure finally showing cracks. "No," Marcus assured her. "We have evidence now, but we need to adjust our timeline. They're moving aggressively, so we respond in kind." He picked up his phone again and dialed a number from memory. "James, it's Marcus Washington. Yes, it has been a while. I need your expertise on a matter involving my daughter." "Tomorrow morning, Westlake High School. Yes, that would be ideal." "Thank you." When he hung up, Lisa was watching him with a knowing expression. "James Carlton, your old unit's legal advisor?" Marcus nodded. "He's a civil rights attorney now. Specializes in institutional accountability." "You're not messing around," Lisa observed, a hint of approval in her voice. "Neither are the Blackwoods," Marcus replied, "but they've miscalculated." "How?" Amara asked. "They assume we're playing the same game they are: institutional politics, influence peddling, legal intimidation. But I've never played that game." Something in his tone made Amara look up sharply. "Dad, what exactly are you planning?" Marcus's expression softened as he met his daughter's concerned gaze. "Nothing illegal or violent, if that's what you're worried about. But Maxwell Blackwood needs to understand that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're above them." Before Amara could press further, another knock came at the apartment door, more insistent this time. Marcus moved to the peephole, then stepped back, his face hardening. "It's a police officer," he said quietly, "and Maxwell Blackwood is standing behind him." Lisa stood immediately, her posture straightening. "All ready?" That was fast, even for him. Marcus nodded to Amara. Go to your room. Record everything on your phone, but stay out of sight. As Amara retreated down the hallway, Marcus and Lisa exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation, assessment, agreement, unified front. Then Marcus opened the door, his expression calm but alert, to find Officer Pete Daniels, a patrolman he recognized from community meetings, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his role. Mr. Washington, Officer Daniels began, glancing back at Maxwell Blackwood, who stood several paces behind with an expression of barely concealed satisfaction. I'm here regarding an incident at Westlake High School this morning, involving your daughter, Amara Washington. Maxwell Blackwood's smirk widened as he watched from a calculated distance. He'd expected intimidation, perhaps fear. What he hadn't expected was the look in Marcus Washington's eyes. Not anger, not anxiety, but something much more dangerous. Recognition. Officer Daniels, Marcus acknowledged, his voice measured as he stood in the doorway, neither blocking entry nor inviting it. What seems to be the issue? The young patrolman shifted his weight, discomfort evident in his posture. Sir, I've received a complaint regarding an alleged assault at Westlake High this morning. Mr. Blackwood here has requested that we... That you what, exactly? Marcus interrupted, his tone still calm but edged with something sharper. File a police report for a school disciplinary matter that's already being handled through proper channels? Or were you planning to arrest a 16-year-old honor student for defending herself against documented harassment? Officer Daniels blinked, clearly unprepared for this response. Behind him, Maxwell Blackwood stepped forward, his expensive golf attire looking increasingly out of place in the modest apartment complex hallway. Officer, I've filed a formal complaint, Blackwood interjected. My daughter was physically assaulted. There's a procedure to follow. Yes, there is, Marcus agreed, turning his attention to Blackwood with a gaze so direct that the developer actually took a half-step back. The procedure involves a complete investigation, including review of all evidence, such as the video recording of your daughter's harassment and physical intimidation that preceded any response from Amara. Blackwood's confident expression flickered. Video? The school security footage was corrupted. How convenient, Lisa remarked, moving to stand beside Marcus. But your daughter's actions had multiple witnesses, several of whom recorded the incident on their phones. Something shifted in Maxwell's eyes, a recalculation. He'd clearly expected this visit to intimidate the Washingtons, to establish dominance through the proxy of law enforcement. Instead, he found himself facing two parents who showed no signs of backing down. Officer Daniels, sensing the tension, attempted to regain control of the situation. If there's evidence of any kind, that would be important to include in the report. We'd be happy to share it, Marcus replied. But I'm curious, Officer Daniels, what exactly prompted this visit? Typically, for a minor school incident involving juveniles, there would be statements taken at the school, witness interviews conducted, evidence gathered before an officer arrived at someone's home. Daniels had the grace to look embarrassed. Mr. Blackwood was quite insistent that we respond immediately given the, circumstances. The circumstances, Lisa repeated flatly. You mean who he is? Maxwell's face hardened. I'm a concerned father whose daughter was attacked. I have every right to seek justice. Justice, Marcus echoed, the word carrying weight beyond its syllables. An interesting concept coming from a man who spent the morning trying to ensure his daughter faces no consequences for her actions. Blackwood's jaw tightened. You don't know who you're dealing with, Washington. For the first time, a hint of a smile touched Marcus's lips, not warm, but calculating. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Blackwood. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. The question is whether you can say the same. The subtle shift in Marcus's demeanor sent a warning signal through Blackwood's consciousness. Not quite danger, but a sudden, uncomfortable awareness that his usual tactics might be ineffective here. Officer Daniels cleared his throat. "Perhaps it would be best if we handled this more formally. I can take statements from both parties at the station." "That won't be necessary," came a new voice from down the hallway. All heads turned to see a man approaching, mid-50s, African-American, wearing an impeccably tailored suit despite the late afternoon hour. He moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to navigating corridors of power. "James Carlton, attorney," he introduced himself, extending a business card to Officer Daniels. "I represent the Washington family. Officer, I presume you're here in an official capacity with a warrant or formal complaint, or is this a courtesy call based on Mr. Blackwood's request?" Daniels accepted the card, visibly relieved at the introduction of a legal professional who might de-escalate the situation. "No warrant, sir. Mr. Blackwood wanted to file a complaint regarding an incident at Westlake High." "I see." Carlton nodded, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp. "And typically, would such a complaint involve an officer coming to a minor's home without prior notification to the parents, without a child advocate present, and without formal charges being filed?" The question hung in the air, weighted with professional skepticism. Daniels shifted uncomfortably. "No, sir, that would not be standard procedure." Carlton nodded again. "I thought not. Officer Daniels, I suggest we handle this matter through proper channels. If Mr. Blackwood wishes to file a formal complaint, he can do so at the station, after which we'll respond appropriately with our own evidence and witness statements." Marcus and Lisa exchanged subtle glances of approval. Carlton had been Marcus's unit's legal advisor during his final 3 years of service, handling everything from operational clearances to the occasional disciplinary issue. He'd since built a successful civilian practice focusing on civil rights and institutional accountability. Maxwell Blackwood's face flushed with barely contained anger. "This is ridiculous. My daughter was assaulted in front of witnesses." "Yes, she was," Carlton agreed mildly. "After she assaulted Amara Washington, both verbally and physically, as clearly documented in video evidence, we'll be submitting to the department, the school board, and if necessary, the district attorney's office." The strategic repositioning was masterful, turning Blackwood's own tactics against him, escalating the potential consequences while remaining strictly within legal and procedural boundaries. Officer Daniels, recognizing the situation had evolved beyond a simple complaint filing, took a diplomatic step back. "Given the circumstances, I believe this matter would best be addressed through formal statements at the station, with all relevant evidence presented." "I'll bring my daughter in tomorrow morning," Maxwell stated, attempting to reclaim some authority in the exchange. "That would be appropriate," Carlton acknowledged. "The Washingtons will provide their statement and evidence as well once they've received formal notification of any complaint." With procedural propriety restored, Officer Daniels nodded to all parties and prepared to leave. Maxwell lingered a moment longer, his gaze fixed on Marcus. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "On that, we agree," Marcus replied, his voice equally low, but carrying a certainty that seemed to catch Blackwood off guard. After they departed, James Carlton turned to Marcus with a raised eyebrow. "When you said you needed assistance with a school matter, you didn't mention it had already escalated to police involvement." "Recent development," Marcus explained as they entered the apartment. "Thank you for arriving when you did." "I was already on my way when you called," Carlton said. "Old habits. When someone from the unit reaches out after years of silence, I assume it's urgent." His expression softened as he spotted Amara emerging from the hallway, phone in hand. "You must be Amara. Your father speaks highly of your academic achievements." Amara managed a small smile. "Thanks for coming, Mr. Carlton." "James, please," he insisted, setting his briefcase on the kitchen table. "Now, let's review what we're dealing with. I gather there's video evidence?" For the next hour, they briefed Carlton on the situation, the history of harassment, the morning's incident, the school's response, and the Blackwood's aggressive escalation. Carlton listened attentively, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound notebook. "Classic intimidation tactics," he observed when they finished. "Maxwell Blackwood is accustomed to using institutional leverage to protect his family's reputation and interests. The police visit was meant to scare you, to establish a pattern of escalation that would make a simple suspension seem like a generous compromise. But it backfired," Lisa noted. "Spectacularly," Carlton agreed. "He didn't expect you to have evidence or immediate legal representation. More importantly, he didn't expect Marcus." The way he said it carried layers of meaning. James Carlton was one of the few people who knew the full extent of Marcus Washington's military background, the operations, the specialized training, the psychological profile that had made him one of the most effective operators in his unit. "Will he back down?" Amara asked. Carlton considered for a moment. Men like Maxwell Blackwood rarely back down entirely. Their ego doesn't allow it. But they do recalibrate when faced with unexpected resistance. He'll be more cautious now, more strategic. "The disciplinary committee meeting is tomorrow morning," Marcus reminded them. "That's his next play." "Then we'll be prepared," Carlton assured them. "The video evidence is compelling. Combine that with Amara's spotless academic record and the documented pattern of harassment, and the committee would be hard-pressed to justify any serious disciplinary action against her." "Unless Blackwood has already stacked the deck," Lisa pointed out. Carlton nodded, acknowledging the concern. "Possible, but not definitive. Boards and committees, even when influenced, need to maintain at least the appearance of fairness. Too obvious a bias creates liability. Something educational institutions are increasingly wary of." As they continued strategizing, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting subtly as he read. "What is it?" Lisa asked, attuned to even his smallest reactions. "Dave from work," Marcus replied. "Maxwell Blackwood just called the mall's general manager, suggesting they review their security staffing. Specifically mentioned concerns about my temperament and judgment." Lisa's eyes widened. "He's coming after your job? Already?" "It's a logical move," Carlton observed. "Financial pressure is a common tactic when legal intimidation doesn't yield immediate results." Marcus's expression remained calm, but there was a cold focus in his eyes that his family recognized. The look he got when shifting from defensive to offensive posture. "Dave says the manager told Blackwood to submit any concerns in writing and reminded him that all security personnel are bonded and professionally certified," Marcus continued. But the implication was clear. "He's trying to isolate us," Lisa concluded. "Cut off support, create vulnerability. Standard approach for someone used to leveraging power asymmetry," Carlton agreed. "He's operating on the assumption that financial pressure will force compliance where direct intimidation failed." Amara looked between the adults, a hint of guilt crossing her face. "This is because of me. He's trying to get Dad fired because I stood up to his daughter." "No," Marcus said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This is because Maxwell Blackwood is accustomed to controlling people through fear and power. He's not used to encountering resistance." "Your father's right," Carlton added. "What we're seeing is a man who believes his position grants him immunity from normal accountability. When someone challenges that belief, he responds with escalating pressure until the challenge subsides." "So what do we do?" Amara asked. Marcus exchanged glances with Carlton, a silent communication born of years working together in high-pressure situations. Carlton nodded almost imperceptibly, understanding the unspoken question. "We change the equation," Marcus said simply. Blackwood expects submission in the face of escalating pressure. We'll give him something else entirely." "What exactly?" Lisa asked, though her tone suggested she already had some idea of what her husband was thinking. "Information," Marcus replied. "Properly applied, it's more effective than any direct confrontation." Carlton opened his briefcase and removed a slim folder. "I took the liberty of preparing some background materials on Blackwood Development's recent projects, specifically the riverfront development that's coming up for city approval." Marcus accepted the folder with a nod of acknowledgement. "Thank you, James." "What's the riverfront development got to do with Kylie bullying me?" Amara asked, confusion evident in her voice. Marcus met his daughter's gaze directly. "Everything in life connects, Amara. People who believe they're untouchable have usually gone to great lengths to create that illusion. But illusions can be dispelled when you understand the machinery behind them." The cryptic answer didn't satisfy Amara, but before she could press further, Carlton glanced at his watch. "We should focus on tomorrow's hearing first. The committee will expect emotional appeals, character witnesses, and procedural arguments. We'll provide those, but our primary advantage is the video evidence and Amara's record." As Carlton outlined their approach for the hearing, Marcus studied the contents of the folder, his mind working on a parallel track. Tomorrow's meeting was important, but it was merely one engagement in what was rapidly evolving into a more complex campaign, one that would require precision, patience, and the strategic application of pressure at exactly the right points. It was, in many ways, exactly the kind of operation he'd been trained for. The Westlake High School conference room was designed to impress. Wood-paneled walls lined with achievement plaques, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured grounds, and a massive oval table that subtly reinforced the hierarchical nature of school governance. By 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the disciplinary hearing was scheduled to begin, the space was already charged with tension. Principal Hoffman sat at the head of the table, a man in his early 60s with silver hair and the practiced neutrality of someone who'd navigated educational politics for decades. To his right sat Vice Principal Chen, visibly uncomfortable, and 3 faculty members who comprised the standing disciplinary committee. On the left side of the table waited Maxwell Blackwood, his attorney, an expensively dressed woman whose crisp movements suggested courtroom efficiency, and Kylie, looking simultaneously smug and victimized in a conservative blue dress that struck a perfect balance between youthful innocence and mature responsibility. When the Washingtons entered, accompanied by James Carlton, Maxwell Blackwood's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. He'd clearly expected Marcus and Amara alone, perhaps intimidated by the formal setting and outnumbered by institutional authority. The presence of Carlton, whose reputation in legal circles was considerable, represented an unexpected complication. "Ah, the Washingtons," Principal Hoffman greeted them with professional cordiality. "And Mr. Carlton, is it? I wasn't aware legal representation would be joining us." Given the nature of the accusations in the presence of Mr. Blackwood's attorney, it seemed appropriate, Carlton replied smoothly, offering a business card. "I'm sure we all want to ensure procedural fairness." Hoffman accepted the card with a slight frown. "This is an internal school matter, not a legal proceeding." That distinction became less clear when Mr. Blackwood involved the police yesterday afternoon, Carlton observed, his tone conversational but pointed. A ripple of surprise passed through the committee members who exchanged glances. Clearly they hadn't been informed of that development. Maxwell leaned forward. "My daughter was assaulted. I have every right to pursue all available remedies." "Including sending an officer to the Washingtons' home to intimidate a 16-year-old student?" Carlton asked, mild but precise. "An interesting interpretation of available remedies." Principal Hoffman raised a hand. "Let's focus on the matter at hand. We're here to address a physical altercation between two students and determine appropriate disciplinary measures." "Agreed," Maxwell's attorney interjected. "And the facts are clear. Amara Washington physically assaulted Kylie Blackwood in front of numerous witnesses. Under the school's zero-tolerance policy for violence, expulsion is the indicated consequence." Marcus remained silent, studying the room dynamics with the same careful assessment he'd once applied to mission environments. He noted the subtle ways Hoffman deferred to Blackwood, the slight angle of his body, the eye contact patterns, the unconscious mirroring of posture. The principal wasn't overtly corrupt, but he was compromised by years of accommodating the Blackwood family's influence. "Before we proceed with accusations and demands," Carlton said, "I believe a complete understanding of the incident is essential. Ms. Washington wasn't the initiator of the confrontation, but the target of sustained harassment that escalated to physical intimidation." "That's absurd," Kylie interjected, her voice pitched with practiced indignation. "She attacked me for no reason. Ask anyone who was there." "An excellent suggestion," Carlton smiled, removing a tablet from his briefcase. "Let's do exactly that." The video from Jamal's phone played in high definition on the conference room's wall screen, the clarity leaving no room for misinterpretation. Every moment was captured in devastating detail. Kylie's initial blocking of Amara's path, the verbal taunts clearly audible despite the hallway noise, the deliberate trip, the destruction of the essay, and finally, after sustained provocation, Amara's reaction. As the video ended, silence engulfed the room. The disciplinary committee members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Vice Principal Chen stared fixedly at the table surface. Principal Hoffman's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing genuine surprise. Maxwell Blackwood's attorney recovered first. "This video appears to have been edited. We have no way to verify its authenticity or context." "We have the original file with intact metadata," Carlton countered. "Additionally, we have signed statements from 12 student witnesses, including the videographer, confirming this accurately represents the incident. I've provided copies for everyone." He distributed folders containing the statements, each notarized that morning before school. Maxwell Blackwood's face had darkened progressively throughout the video. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but edged with anger. "This changes nothing. My daughter may have used poor judgment in her choice of words, but that doesn't justify physical assault." "Poor judgment in choice of words?" Lisa Washington spoke for the first time, her tone incredulous. "Your daughter deliberately harassed mine with racial slurs and physical intimidation. She destroyed schoolwork, blocked Amara's path, and created a hostile educational environment, all documented behaviors that violate multiple school policies." "Mrs. Washington is correct," Carlton added. "The Westlake Student Handbook explicitly prohibits behaviors including intimidation, harassment, property destruction, and creating hostile environments based on protected characteristics, including race, all of which are evident in the video." Principal Hoffman cleared his throat. "This certainly presents a more complete picture of the incident than we initially had." "A picture that was deliberately obscured," Marcus observed quietly. "The school security footage covering this incident was conveniently corrupted, and students were instructed to delete their recordings. One might reasonably question why." The implied accusation hung in the air. Vice Principal Chen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. One of the disciplinary committee members, a middle-aged math teacher with a reputation for fairness, leaned forward with a frown. "Is that true, Robert?" she asked Chen. "Were students told to delete evidence?" Chen hesitated, visibly torn between institutional loyalty and professional integrity. "There was a directive from administration to enforce our policy against unauthorized recording on school grounds." "Issued specifically after this incident?" the teacher pressed. Chen's silence was answer enough. Maxwell Blackwood's attorney attempted to refocus the discussion. Regardless of the circumstances, Ms. Washington's resort to physical violence violated school policy. The handbook is clear on this point. The handbook also acknowledges the right to self-defense, Carlton countered. And more importantly, it mandates proportional disciplinary responses that consider the totality of circumstances. Expelling a student with an exemplary record who reacted to sustained harassment would be neither proportional nor just. Principal Hoffman, sensing the meeting slipping beyond his control, attempted to reassert authority. The committee will need time to review all this new evidence and the relevant policies. Of course, Carlton agreed reasonably. Though I would point out that Amara has already served 1 day of suspension, while Ms. Blackwood has faced no consequences whatsoever, despite clear evidence of instigating the incident. The disciplinary committee members exchanged glances again, a subtle shift occurring in their demeanor. The math teacher spoke up. I believe we've seen enough to question the initial characterization of this incident. At minimum, both students should face equivalent interim measures while we deliberate. Maxwell Blackwood's face tightened. My daughter is the victim here. The evidence suggests otherwise, Marcus said, his first direct contribution to the discussion. His voice was calm but carried an undeniable weight. The video clearly shows who instigated, who escalated, and who ultimately crossed the line into physical contact first. If you're concerned about fairness, Mr. Blackwood, perhaps you should consider what equitable treatment actually looks like in this situation. Something in Marcus's steady gaze made Blackwood straighten almost defensively. The developer was accustomed to deference, to people backing down when confronted with his influence. Marcus Washington did neither, and something about his composed confidence was more unsettling than any emotional display would have been. Principal Hoffman, reading the room, made a strategic adjustment. In light of the evidence presented, I propose that both students serve equivalent in-school suspensions while the committee reviews the complete record. We'll reconvene in 3 days with our final determination. It was a compromise that satisfied no one fully, a hallmark of effective political navigation. Maxwell Blackwood clearly wanted immediate vindication for his daughter. The Washingtons wanted accountability for Kylie's behavior, but the balance had shifted perceptibly since the meeting began. We accept the interim arrangement, Carlton stated, with the expectation that the final determination will reflect the evidence presented today. Maxwell's attorney leaned over to whisper something in his ear. After a moment of visible internal struggle, he nodded curtly. Fine, 3 days, but I expect this matter to be resolved appropriately. As the meeting adjourned, Maxwell Blackwood intercepted Marcus near the door. Impressive performance, Washington, he said quietly. But don't think this is over. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Marcus met his gaze steadily. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Blackwood. I know exactly who you are. You. Something in his tone, the absolute certainty, the hint of knowledge beyond what should be possible, made Blackwood hesitate. What's that supposed to mean? He demanded. It means I've spent my life identifying threats, Marcus replied, his voice low enough that only Blackwood could hear. Some wear uniforms, some wear expensive suits, but they all have the same weakness. They believe their power makes them untouchable. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? No, Marcus said simply. It's an observation. You came after my family thinking there would be no significant resistance because of who you are. That was a miscalculation. Before Blackwood could respond, Carlton approached, effectively ending the conversation. As they left the conference room, Amara fell into step beside her father. What did Mr. Blackwood say to you? She asked quietly. He's trying to reassert control, Marcus explained. When people accustomed to dominance encounter unexpected resistance, they typically escalate before reassessing. Will he back off now that everyone's seen the video? Marcus shook his head slightly. No. He'll change tactics, but he won't abandon the effort. This has become about more than just the incident for him. It's about maintaining his perception of authority. So what happens next? Amara asked as they walked toward the parking lot, where Lisa waited with Carlton. He'll look for other pressure points, Marcus explained. My job, our finances, school administration. When institutional leverage fails, men like Blackwood often resort to personal attacks. That's not fair, Amara said, indignation rising in her voice. No, it's not, Marcus agreed. But understanding your opponent's likely moves is the first step in neutralizing them. As they reached the car, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it, his expression unchanged, but his eyes reflecting a new calculation. What is it? Lisa asked. Dave from work, Marcus replied. Maxwell Blackwood just scheduled a meeting with the mall management company's regional director. Apparently, there are serious concerns about security protocols that need addressing. He's going after your job, Amara realized, her face falling. Because of me. No, Marcus corrected gently. Because of his own inability to accept that his daughter should be held accountable for her actions. This isn't about you, Amara. It's about a man who's used to winning every conflict through intimidation and influence. So he'll get you fired, and then what? We just lose? Marcus exchanged a look with Carlton, who nodded almost imperceptibly. No, Marcus said, a quiet certainty in his voice that made even Lisa look at him with renewed attention. Now we implement Phase 3. What's Phase 3? Amara asked. Information properly applied, Marcus answered, opening the car door for her. Mr. Blackwood believes he's declaring war. What he doesn't realize is that the war began the moment he targeted you, and wars are won through intelligence, patience, and precision. 3 things he lacks, and we don't. Phase 3 began in the pre-dawn darkness the following morning. Marcus Washington sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open before him, the blue light illuminating his focused expression. Around him lay documents from Carlton's folder, property records, planning commission minutes, environmental impact statements, and financial disclosures related to Blackwood Development's riverfront project. Lisa emerged from the bedroom at 4:30 a.m., wrapping her robe around herself as she joined him. Without a word, she placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that required no explanation after 20 years of marriage. You haven't slept, she observed, studying the meticulous notes arranged beside the laptop. No need, Marcus replied, his voice clear despite the hour. Everything's coming together. Lisa glanced at the documents, her nursing background giving her a different but equally methodical analytical approach. You found something in the riverfront project? Several somethings, Marcus confirmed. Carlton's initial research pointed the way, but the real patterns only emerged after cross-referencing with public records and financial disclosures. Lisa sat beside him, examining a diagram he'd created, a flowchart tracking money, influence, and decision points. This is about more than just getting Blackwood to back off from Amara, isn't it? Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze. It's about accountability. Blackwood has been operating with impunity for years, at the school, in business, throughout the community. He believes his position shields him from consequences. And you're going to show him otherwise, Lisa concluded. It wasn't a question. In my former work, Marcus said carefully, we learned that precision is everything. The right pressure, applied at exactly the right point, can accomplish what brute force never could. Lisa studied him for a long moment. She knew more about his military service than anyone, Not the classified operational details, but the psychological toll, the specialized training, the mindset it had required. She recognized that same focused calculation now. "Will it put you in danger?" she asked finally. "Or us?" "No," Marcus assured her. "Everything stays within legal and ethical boundaries. This isn't about vengeance or even justice in the abstract. It's about creating a situation where continuing to target Amara costs Blackwood more than he's willing to pay." Changing the equation, Lisa nodded, recalling his earlier phrasing. "Exactly." Marcus closed the laptop. "I need to make a few calls before heading to work. The timing has to be precise." Lisa squeezed his shoulder once more before moving to the kitchen to start coffee. "Just remember what you always told Amara. Control the moment, don't let the moment control you." Marcus smiled faintly at hearing his own advice reflected back to him. Always. By 8:30 a.m., Marcus was at his security station at Westfield Mall, performing his duties with his usual methodical efficiency. To any observer, he appeared entirely focused on his job, monitoring security feeds, conducting scheduled patrols, assisting lost children and confused elderly shoppers with the same patient attention. What no one saw were the calls he made during his breaks, each brief but purposeful, or the precisely worded emails sent from his phone, attaching specific documents to carefully selected recipients. At 10:45 a.m., Dave approached his station, his expression troubled. "Washington, the regional director is here. He wants to see you in the management office." Marcus nodded, unsurprised. "I'll be right there." Dave hesitated. "Look, I don't know what this is about, but Blackwood was in there for half an hour before you got called. Just watch yourself, all right?" "I appreciate the heads up," Marcus replied, his calm unbroken. The management office suite occupied the mall's upper level, offering a view of the main concourse below. As Marcus entered, he noted the positioning of everyone in the room, a habit so ingrained it was nearly unconscious. Regional Director Philip Mercer sat behind the desk, his expression grave. Beside him stood Maxwell Blackwood, an air of restrained triumph evident in his posture. The mall's general manager hovered uncomfortably near the window, clearly present but attempting to maintain distance from whatever was about to unfold. "Washington," Mercer greeted him with professional neutrality. "Please have a seat." Marcus sat, his posture relaxed but alert, hands resting comfortably on the chair's armrests. He acknowledged Blackwood with a slight nod but maintained his focus on Mercer. "Mr. Blackwood has raised some serious concerns about security protocols," Mercer began, gesturing toward the developer. "Specifically, he's questioned whether your background is appropriate for this position." "I see," Marcus replied evenly. "And what aspects of my background concern Mr. Blackwood?" Maxwell stepped forward, unable to contain himself. "Let's not play games, Washington. Your confrontational approach at the school, your military history, it raises questions about your temperament for civilian security work." Marcus turned to him, expression unchanged. "My military service is noted in my employment file, Mr. Blackwood. It's never been a secret, nor has it ever interfered with my performance here." "Mr. Blackwood suggests there may be undisclosed elements to your service record," Mercer added carefully. "Elements that might present liability concerns for our company." "Interesting theory," Marcus replied. "I wonder how Mr. Blackwood would have access to information about my service record that isn't publicly available." The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. Maxwell's confident expression faltered slightly. "That's not relevant," he recovered quickly. "What matters is ensuring appropriate security personnel for a family-oriented shopping center." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I agree completely. Integrity and security is paramount, just as it is in community development and public-private partnerships." The seemingly innocuous statement landed with unexpected weight. Maxwell's eyes narrowed, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "What's that supposed to mean?" he demanded. Marcus turned back to Mercer. "Sir, I understand you need to address Mr. Blackwood's concerns. Before you make any decisions, however, you should be aware that there's a larger context to this situation." He removed his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen a few times, then slid it across the desk to Mercer. "The Sacramento Business Journal just published this article 15 minutes ago. I believe it's relevant to our discussion." Mercer picked up the phone, his eyebrows rising as he read the headline, "Ethics Commission launches investigation into riverfront development approvals." Maxwell Blackwood stiffened visibly. "What is this?" Mercer continued reading aloud. "The State Ethics Commission announced this morning it has opened a formal investigation into potential conflicts of interest and procedural irregularities surrounding the approval process for the $200 million Riverfront Plaza development. Documents submitted anonymously to the Commission appear to show irregular communications between project developers and zoning officials, questionable environmental impact assessments, and potential financial relationships that should have been disclosed under state transparency laws." He looked up, confusion evident on his face. "I don't understand what this has to do with—" "Keep reading," Marcus suggested quietly. Mercer scrolled down, his expression shifting as he continued. "Blackwood Development, the primary contractor for the project, declined immediate comment. However, sources close to the investigation indicate that whistleblower protection has been extended to multiple individuals with direct knowledge of the approval process." The color drained from Maxwell Blackwood's face. For the first time since Marcus had encountered him, the developer appeared genuinely shaken. "This is absurd," he managed, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "A baseless investigation that will go nowhere." "Perhaps," Marcus agreed mildly, "though the Commission doesn't typically launch formal investigations without substantial preliminary evidence." Maxwell's eyes fixed on Marcus with sudden, dawning comprehension. "You," he said, the word barely audible. "You did this." "I'm a mall security guard, Mr. Blackwood," Marcus replied, his tone innocent but his gaze unwavering. "How could I possibly influence a state ethics investigation?" The question was rhetorical, and all three men knew it. What hung unspoken in the air was the implication that Marcus Washington was far more than his current occupation suggested, and that he possessed both the capability and the will to systematically dismantle Maxwell Blackwood's carefully constructed empire of influence. Mercer cleared his throat, clearly reassessing the dynamics playing out before him. "Well, this is unexpected. Perhaps we should postpone our discussion about security protocols until a more appropriate time." "I think that would be wise," Marcus agreed, rising from his chair. "If there's nothing else, I should return to my duties." Mercer nodded, returning the phone. "Yes, of course. Thank you for your time, Washington." As Marcus turned to leave, Maxwell stepped into his path. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and tight with barely contained rage. "You have no idea what you've started." Marcus met his gaze calmly. "That's where you're wrong, Mr. Blackwood. I know exactly what I've started, and precisely how it ends. The question is whether you do." He stepped around the stunned developer and exited the office, leaving behind a silence heavy with unresolved tension and shifting power dynamics. By the time Marcus's shift ended at 4 p.m., 3 more news outlets had picked up the story about the ethics investigation. His phone buzzed with a text from Carlton. Phase 3 proceeding as anticipated. Additional documents being reviewed by Tribune investigative team. Call me. Marcus drove home with the measured focus that characterized all his movements, his mind already mapping the next sequence of events. Maxwell Blackwood was a formidable opponent within his domain of influence, but he was also predictable. A man accustomed to wielding power directly through intimidation and leverage. He wasn't prepared for asymmetric pressure applied with precision to his most vulnerable points. When Marcus arrived home, he found Amara and Lisa at the kitchen table, Amara's school tablet open to a local news website. "Dad," Amara said as he entered, her expression a mix of confusion and dawning realization. "There's a big investigation into Mr. Blackwood's riverfront project. It's all over the news." "I saw that," Marcus acknowledged, setting his keys on the counter. Amara studied him, connecting dots with the sharp intelligence that had always been her hallmark. "This is phase 3, isn't it? What you meant by information properly applied." Lisa watched him too, her gaze knowing but questioning. "The Ethics Commission received evidence of irregularities in the approval process," Marcus said carefully. "Evidence that had been there all along, but needed to be compiled and presented effectively." "By you," Amara stated. Marcus considered his response. He'd never lied to his daughter, even when the full truth was complex or uncomfortable. "I identified the relevant information. James helped ensure it reached the appropriate authorities through proper channels." "But why would they investigate just because you sent them some documents?" Amara pressed. "Because the documents were compelling," Marcus explained, "and because 3 former Planning Commission employees were willing to provide corroborating statements once they understood they would have whistleblower protection." Lisa's eyebrows rose. "You found whistleblowers in less than 24 hours?" "They were already there," Marcus corrected. "People who had concerns but felt powerless to act against someone with Blackwood's influence. They just needed a secure pathway and the confidence that they wouldn't stand alone." Amara stared at her father, a mixture of awe and uncertainty washing over her face. "Is this legal, what you did?" "Completely," Marcus assured her. "The evidence was already there in public records, financial disclosures, and witness experiences. All I did was connect dots that were hiding in plain sight." Lisa leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "But why would Blackwood risk his business reputation over a school incident? It seems disproportionate." "It was never about the school incident," Marcus explained, taking a seat at the table. "Not really. For men like Blackwood, every interaction is about power and control. When we refused to be intimidated, when we challenged his daughter's immunity, we became a threat to his fundamental understanding of how the world works." "So this was inevitable?" Amara asked. "Once he escalated beyond the school, yes," Marcus nodded. "He could have accepted the disciplinary committee's compromise. Instead, he tried to leverage his influence to have me fired, to create financial pressure that would force us to back down." "That's when you decided to implement phase 3, Lisa concluded. "Precisely." Marcus's expression remained calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes that Amara had rarely seen, a glimpse of the man he had been before becoming her father. "Blackwood assumed we had no recourse, no capacity to push back effectively. He miscalculated." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Marcus rose, moving to the peephole with his characteristic silent efficiency. James Carlton stood outside, briefcase in hand, his expression suggesting important developments. "James," Marcus greeted him, opening the door. "Come in." Carlton entered, nodding to Lisa and Amara before setting his briefcase on the table. "Things are accelerating faster than anticipated," he announced without preamble. "The Ethics Commission investigation has triggered a domino effect. The district attorney's office is now reviewing potential criminal implications, and the city council has called an emergency session to discuss suspending all approvals related to the riverfront project." "That was fast," Lisa observed. The preliminary evidence was compelling, Carlton explained, but what really caught fire was the paper trail connecting campaign contributions to specific zoning exemptions. 3 council members have already recused themselves from all Blackwood-related votes, citing appearance of impropriety. Translation, they're running for cover, Marcus noted. Carlton nodded. Standard response when a previously untouchable power broker suddenly appears vulnerable. No one wants to be caught on the wrong side of a developing scandal. Amara looked between the adults, processing the implications. So Mr. Blackwood is in real trouble? Not just like bad publicity? Potentially significant trouble, Carlton confirmed. The Riverfront project represents over 60% of Blackwood Development's current portfolio. If approvals are suspended pending investigation, the financial implications would be substantial. Add potential legal liability and he's exposed, Marcus finished. Vulnerable in exactly the areas he values most: reputation, influence, and financial stability. There's more, Carlton added, removing a document from his briefcase. Principal Hoffman called an hour ago. The disciplinary committee has completed its review ahead of schedule. Their determination is that Kylie Blackwood will serve a 2-week suspension and be required to complete an anti-bullying program before returning to regular classes. And Amara, Lisa asked. All disciplinary measures against her have been rescinded, with a formal acknowledgement that her response, while not condoned, was the result of sustained provocation. The incident will not appear in her permanent record. Relief washed over Amara's face. So it's over? Just like that? Not quite, Carlton cautioned. The school's sudden reversal suggests they're aware of Blackwood's changing circumstances and are repositioning accordingly. But Maxwell himself hasn't conceded anything yet. He won't, Marcus said with certainty. Not directly. Men like Blackwood don't acknowledge defeat. They reframe the narrative to preserve their self-image of dominance. As if summoned by his words, Marcus's phone rang. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number with the local area code. Marcus Washington, he answered, his voice neutral. Washington. Maxwell Blackwood's voice came through clearly, tightly controlled, but edged with something new, a strain that hadn't been present in their previous encounters. I think it's time we had a private conversation. Marcus caught Carlton's eye, then Lisa's. Both nodded slightly. I'm listening, Marcus replied. Not over the phone, Blackwood insisted. In person. The situation has evolved in ways that warrant direct discussion. I'm available tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., Marcus offered. McLaren Park, by the lake. A pause stretched across the line. Blackwood, clearly surprised by both the prompt availability and the specific location. A public park, away from his usual domains of influence. Fine, he agreed finally. 7 a.m., come alone. I always do, Marcus replied evenly, ending the call. The park? Lisa questioned, recognizing his strategic choice. Open space, multiple access points, good visibility, Marcus explained, and neutral territory, which matters psychologically. He's used to home field advantage. Carlton nodded approvingly. He's reaching out because the pressure points are working. The ethics investigation, the DA's interest, the council's emergency session, his entire operational framework is destabilizing. What do you think he wants? Amara asked. To negotiate, Marcus answered simply. He's realizing that continuing this conflict has become more costly than resolving it. Can we trust him? Lisa's question cut to the heart of the matter. Marcus considered before responding. Trust isn't relevant. We can trust his self-interest, which now lies in containment rather than escalation. That evening, as Amara completed homework at the kitchen table, she found herself stealing glances at her father as he methodically prepared dinner. chopping vegetables with the same precise economy of movement that characterized everything he did. The events of the past few days had revealed dimensions to him she'd glimpsed but never fully understood. "Dad," she ventured finally, "can I ask you something about your military service?" Marcus paused, knife suspended above the cutting board. "Of course. Were you really a sniper? Like the kind they show in movies?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Movies tend to dramatize, but yes, I was a designated marksman and later a sniper for a specialized unit." Amara absorbed this, connecting it to the strategic precision she'd witnessed in his handling of the Blackwood situation. "Is that why you're so calm about everything? Because of your training?" Marcus set down the knife, giving her his full attention. "Partly. The training teaches you to control variables rather than react to them, to identify pressure points, calculate angles of approach, account for external factors." "Like what you did with Mr. Blackwood," Amara observed. "Similar principles, different application," Marcus acknowledged. "In both contexts, emotion is a variable to be managed, not indulged." "But you must have felt something when he came after us like that," Amara pressed. "When he tried to get you fired, when he called the police." Marcus considered his answer carefully. "I felt concern for you and your mother. Responsibility to protect our family, but not anger or fear in the way most people experience them." "That sound, I don't know, almost inhuman," Amara said, then immediately regretted her choice of words. "I didn't mean—" "It's a fair observation," Marcus interrupted gently. "The training recalibrates your relationship with certain emotions, not eliminating them, but channeling them differently. It's why your mother worried when I first came home from my final deployment." Amara's eyes widened slightly. This was new information, a glimpse into her parents' life before her birth. "Mom was worried about you." "With good reason," Marcus admitted. "The transition to civilian life isn't simple when you've been trained to operate in environments where different rules apply, different instincts are necessary." "What changed?" Marcus's expression softened. "You did, primarily. Becoming a father provided purpose and context for adapting those instincts to a new environment. Your mother's patience helped too." Amara digested this, seeing her family history in a new light. "So when Kylie started targeting me, it activated protective instincts," Marcus confirmed, "but filtered through years of civilian adaptation. My response wasn't military, it was paternal, informed by training, but not defined by it." The distinction seemed important to him, Amara realized. He wanted her to understand that his handling of the Blackwood situation wasn't a return to his former operational mindset, but rather a selective application of relevant skills within ethical civilian boundaries. "Thank you," she said finally, "for protecting me, for being you." Marcus's smile reached his eyes this time, a genuine warmth that most people never saw beneath his controlled exterior. Always. By 6:45 a.m. the next morning, Marcus was already at McLaren Park, having arrived early to survey the location. The pre-dawn light cast long shadows across the landscape as he stood by the small lake, hands in the pockets of his jacket, posture relaxed but alert. The air was crisp with early autumn chill, mist rising from the water's surface in ghostly tendrils. He heard Maxwell Blackwood's approach before seeing him, designer shoes on the gravel path, the rhythm of movement suggesting a man trying to project confidence despite internal turmoil. Marcus didn't turn until Blackwood was nearly beside him, an old habit from operations where revealing awareness too early surrendered tactical advantage. "Washington," Blackwood greeted him tersely. Gone was the polished developer from their previous encounters, replaced by a man who'd clearly had little sleep. His expensive suit couldn't disguise the strain evident in his posture and expression. "Mr. Blackwood," Marcus acknowledged with a slight nod. "You wanted to talk." Blackwood glanced around, confirming they were alone before speaking. This ethics investigation, the DA's interest, the council's emergency session. You orchestrated all of it. It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. I ensured that relevant information reached appropriate authorities. The response is their own. Don't play semantic games, Blackwood snapped, a flash of his usual arrogance breaking through the fatigue. You've deliberately targeted my business interests in retaliation for a school disciplinary matter. No, Marcus corrected calmly. I responded to your attempt to leverage your influence to have me fired and create financial pressure on my family. You escalated beyond the school. I merely ensured there were consequences for that choice. Blackwood's jaw tightened. Do you have any idea what you've done? The riverfront project is worth over $200 million. There are investors, contractors, timelines, all of which remain viable if the project itself is legitimate, Marcus pointed out. If proper procedures were followed, if environmental assessments were accurate, if zoning exemptions were obtained through legitimate channels, the implication hung in the morning air between them. Blackwood's silence was confirmation enough. What do you want? He asked finally, the question emerging with visible effort. Marcus turned to face him fully. Initially, for your daughter to be held accountable for her actions and for Amara to be treated fairly. Now, for you to understand that your influence has boundaries, that there are consequences when you attempt to use your position to intimidate and threaten others. And if I concede these points, Blackwood asked carefully, what happens to the ethics investigation, the DA's interest? Those processes will follow their own course, Marcus replied. I have no control over independent regulatory and legal authorities. What I can control is whether additional evidence and witnesses continue to emerge. Blackwood studied him with new wariness, finally recognizing the precise calibration of pressure being applied. You're blackmailing me. No, Marcus corrected again. I'm establishing clear boundaries with proportional consequences for violating them. The distinction matters legally and ethically. Maxwell Blackwood stared at Marcus, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the man standing before him. The mall security guard with the military background had revealed himself to be something far more formidable, a strategist who had systematically identified pressure points and applied precisely calibrated force to achieve specific objectives. Who are you really, Washington? Blackwood asked, genuine curiosity breaking through his anger. Exactly who I appear to be, Marcus replied. A father protecting his daughter, a man who understands systems and leverage points. Nothing more complicated than that. Blackwood shook his head slightly. No, there's more to it. The way you've orchestrated this, it's not amateur work. Marcus didn't respond to the implied question, instead redirecting to the immediate situation. Your position is precarious but not unsalvageable, Mr. Blackwood. The question is whether you're willing to accept new parameters. Parameters, Blackwood repeated, testing the word. You mean terms. If you prefer, Marcus conceded. They're straightforward. Your daughter faces the consequences determined by the school for her actions. You cease all attempts to leverage your influence against my family. The public narrative becomes one of regulatory oversight functioning as designed rather than targeted exposure. And in return, no additional information finds its way to investigating authorities. What they already have will proceed on its own merits but without further acceleration from new sources. Blackwood calculated visibly, weighing his diminishing options. The riverfront project is still at risk. Portions of it, perhaps, Marcus acknowledged. The elements obtained through proper channels should survive scrutiny. The others will require adjustment, renegotiation, or abandonment. You understand I could still pursue legal action against your daughter, Blackwood countered, a final attempt at establishing leverage. Marcus met his gaze steadily. You could, but we both know the video evidence makes that counterproductive. More importantly, every legal action opens new channels for discovery. Channels that might reveal connections you'd prefer remain unexplored. The implied threat wasn't lost on Blackwood. Legal proceedings would create additional vulnerability, potential exposure beyond what he already faced. You've thought of everything, he observed, a reluctant note of respect in his voice. Not everything, Marcus replied honestly. Just the variables that matter most to each of us. Your business interests and public standing, my daughter's well-being and our family's security. Blackwood turned away slightly, looking out over the lake, where morning light now glinted on the rippling surface. For several moments he said nothing, and Marcus allowed the silence to stretch, a tactical patience learned through years of operations where rushing could compromise objectives. My daughter will accept the school's disciplinary measures, Blackwood said finally. I'll withdraw any complaints against Amara. My involvement with Westlake administration returns to normal board functions only. Marcus nodded once, acknowledging the concession. In return, Blackwood continued, you provide no further information to investigators. Whatever they have now is their baseline. We both step back and let the process unfold without additional intervention. Agreed, Marcus said simply. Blackwood extended his hand, a businessman's reflex for sealing agreements. Marcus hesitated briefly, then accepted the handshake, firm but not aggressive, a professional acknowledgement rather than reconciliation. I misjudged you, Washington, Blackwood admitted, releasing his hand. A mistake I won't make again. That awareness alone is valuable, Marcus replied, for both of us. As Blackwood turned to leave, he paused, a final question occurring to him. The information you gathered, how much more is there? Marcus's expression remained neutral. Enough. The single word carried more weight than any elaboration could have. Blackwood nodded once more, then walked away, his posture straighter than when he'd arrived, a man who had lost a significant battle but was already regrouping for whatever came next. Marcus watched him go, then took out his phone to call Carlton with a brief update. The confrontation had ended exactly as he'd anticipated, not with Blackwood's capitulation, but with a strategic recalibration that allowed both sides to disengage without further escalation. By the time he reached home, the morning news was reporting that the city council had voted to continue the riverfront project, pending review of specific elements that had raised regulatory concerns. The compromise allowed development to proceed on portions with proper approvals, while isolating potentially problematic elements for further investigation. A face-saving measure, Carlton observed when he called to discuss the development. The council gives Blackwood a partial victory while maintaining the appearance of oversight, classic institutional damage control. Will it work? Lisa asked, listening on speakerphone as she prepared for her nursing shift. For the council, yes, Carlton confirmed. For Blackwood, it's a significant setback, but not a terminal one. He'll lose some money, some influence, but he's resilient. What matters is that the power dynamic has been permanently altered. 3 days later, Amara returned to regular classes at Westlake High. The hallways felt different, not just because Kylie Blackwood was absent, serving her suspension, but because of subtle shifts in how other students interacted with her. There were nods of acknowledgement from people who had previously looked away, brief conversations where silence had been the norm, even a few direct expressions of support. Everyone saw the video, Jamal explained as they walked to AP Chemistry together. After the Blackwoods tried to get it suppressed, it basically went viral through the school, classic Streisand effect. Plus, there's the whole thing with Mr. Blackwood's business troubles, Tyler added, joining them. It's all connected in people's minds, even if no one's saying it directly. Amara absorbed this information with mixed feelings. She hadn't wanted notoriety or to be defined by the confrontation. Yet there was undeniable validation in having the truth acknowledged, in no longer being isolated by Kylie's campaign of intimidation. Vice Principal Chen stopped her outside the cafeteria that afternoon. "Ms. Washington, a moment?" She followed him to a quiet alcove, wondering what new development had emerged. "I wanted to apologize," Chen said, surprising her. "My handling of the initial incident was influenced by considerations beyond the immediate facts. That was a disservice to you and to my professional responsibilities." Amara hadn't expected this. An adult in authority acknowledging a failure of judgment. "Thank you," she managed, unsure what else to say. Chen nodded, seemingly relieved by her simple acceptance. "Your father is an interesting man. If you don't mind my asking, what exactly did he do in the military?" The question caught her off guard, though she'd heard variations of it from several people since the confrontation with the Blackwoods. Everyone seemed to sense there was more to Marcus Washington than was immediately apparent. "He doesn't talk about it much," Amara replied honestly. "But whatever it was, it taught him how to handle difficult situations." Chen seemed to accept this, though curiosity lingered in his expression. "Well, if you have any issues going forward, my door is always open. Directly, no intermediaries necessary." The offer represented a subtle but significant shift, direct access without procedural barriers, a small but meaningful rebalancing of institutional power. At home that evening, Amara found her father at the kitchen table, methodically field stripping and cleaning his old service pistol. A monthly ritual he performed with the same focused precision he brought to all tasks. "How was your first day back?" he asked, not looking up from his work. "Different," Amara replied, setting her backpack on a chair. "People are being nice, or at least not ignoring me anymore." Marcus nodded, reassembling the weapon with practiced movements. Social dynamics respond to perceived power shifts. What they witnessed wasn't just Kylie being held accountable, but the limits of her father's influence being exposed. "So they're nice because they think we have power now?" Amara frowned, not entirely comfortable with this interpretation. "Some, perhaps," Marcus acknowledged. "Others simply feel safer showing their true perspectives now that the dominant narrative has been challenged. People often know what's right, but hesitate to act on that knowledge when there seems to be a cost." Like the whistleblowers you found, Amara realized. They already knew what was happening was wrong, but they needed a protected pathway to act on that knowledge, Marcus finished, locking the pistol in its secure case. "Most people want to do the right thing. They just need to believe it's possible without disproportionate personal cost." Amara considered this as she retrieved her homework. It wasn't a cynical view, she decided, but a pragmatic one, acknowledging human nature while creating conditions that encouraged its better aspects. "Dad," she asked after a moment, "would you really have let Mr. Blackwood lose everything? His business, his reputation, all of it?" Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "No. Despite what he might believe, destruction was never the objective. Accountability was. Proportional consequences for specific actions." "Just like with Kylie," Amara observed. "You never wanted her expelled or criminally charged, just held responsible for what she actually did." "Exactly." Marcus's expression softened with approval at her understanding. Excessive force creates unnecessary collateral damage and often proves counterproductive to long-term objectives. The language was still tactical, military, but Amara was beginning to see the ethical framework beneath it, a disciplined approach to justice that distinguished between punishment and accountability, between vengeance and consequence. 2 weeks later, Kylie Blackwood returned to school. The hallway dynamics had shifted permanently, her entourage diminished, her former imperious confidence replaced by a more subdued presence. When she and Amara passed each other in the math wing, there was a moment of tension. Then Kylie simply nodded once, not friendly, but acknowledging a new reality, before continuing on her way. Not exactly an apology, Lisa observed when Amara recounted the interaction at dinner, but a recognition of boundaries at least. It's a start, Marcus agreed. People rarely transform completely after a single consequence, but they do recalibrate their understanding of acceptable behavior. Do you think it'll last? Amara asked. Or will things go back to how they were once people forget about all this? Marcus considered the question with his characteristic thoroughness. Some elements will endure. The school administration's awareness of scrutiny, the students' understanding that dominant narratives can be challenged, the Blackwoods' recognition that their influence has limits. And for you? Lisa asked, studying him across the table. What endures from this experience? Marcus glanced at Amara, then back to his wife. The confirmation that systems can be navigated effectively even when initial power dynamics appear unfavorable. That precision and restraint accomplish more than brute force or emotional reaction. Lessons worth reinforcing. Amara recognized he was speaking not just as her father, but as her teacher, passing on principles that had guided his own actions, principles she might apply in her own way as she moved through life. Later that evening, as Amara worked on college application essays at her desk, her father appeared in the doorway. He rarely interrupted her studies, respecting her focus in the same way he expected others to respect his. I have something for you, he said, handing her a small wooden box with a hinged lid. I've been waiting for the right moment. Curious, Amara opened it. Inside lay a compass, not digital but analog, brass with a glass face, clearly old but meticulously maintained. My first field compass, Marcus explained. From my initial training before specialized operations, it's been recalibrated recently, so it's still accurate. Amara lifted it carefully, feeling its weight. Solid, reliable, precise. It's beautiful, but why now? Because you've demonstrated the qualities it represents, Marcus replied. The ability to maintain direction under pressure, to navigate complex terrain, to find your way when landmarks seem unfamiliar. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. The compass wasn't just a memento, but a tangible acknowledgement of growth, of lessons learned and applied. Thank you, she said, understanding the significance of the gift, a piece of his past entrusted to her future. Marcus nodded, a rare smile softening his features. The world is rarely fair in its initial conditions, Amara, but with the right tools, the right understanding, and the courage to act precisely when necessary, those conditions can be adjusted. Remember that. As he turned to leave, Amara called after him. Dad, I'm glad you were a sniper. He paused, looking back with a raised eyebrow. Because it means you know how to solve problems without just charging in and making everything worse, she explained. You taught me that precision matters more than power. Marcus considered this, then nodded once more, a gesture that contained approval, acknowledgement, and a father's enduring pride in watching his daughter find her own path forward, guided by principles that would serve her long after the memory of Kylie Blackwood had faded into insignificance. In that moment, standing in her doorway, Marcus Washington wasn't an elite military operative or a strategic mastermind. He was simply a father who had done what fathers since the beginning of time have strived to do, protect his child while teaching her to navigate a world that wouldn't always be fair, but could always be faced with integrity, intelligence, and the courage to stand firm when it mattered most.